It was fascinating. It's one of the pieces I studied the most in my life. It was funny because I was studying at the same time Janacek's Yenufa, the opera, and the Messiah, Handel's Messiah. And then I read an article by a conductor from the history of music, probably the composer in which it's more difficult to really understand what was their actual purpose, what's behind the notes. The most difficult to get to the actual purpose of the composer are probably Janacek and Handel. You realize that there is a text, there are few lines, but there aren't those many dynamics written, there is no articulations or few articulations. So in a way it's an open world of possibilities, and therefore that requires real studying in order to form your own vision of what's the piece, or what do you see behind the piece, behind the notes. And in that sense, I remember it as a fascinating period, studying it for very long, but also with the responsibility of performing it with an orchestra which performs the Messiah every single year, and for an audience which is very much looking forward to have their annual encounter with Messiah, as that's the case here in Toronto. I do know she conducted the Messiah before, about almost 20 years ago. I mean, before here in Toronto, in front of the TSO. So it's great to have her back. It's someone who is extremely experienced in older music, Baroque and classical music, really a specialist. And that's the interesting thing about having a regular encounter with Messiah here in Toronto with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, is that we have every year the opportunity of bringing someone with a different background, idea, vision, and if that's possible with any piece of the classical repertoire, definitely with the Messiah, which actually is fascinating to realize that the Messiah sounds every year completely different. There are so many possibilities of ideas, of sound, of tempi, of inflections or rhetoric of the music. What do you emphasize? Where do you relax? Which are the directions of the music? And yeah, I think that's fascinating also for the musicians. So that's impossible to fall into routines and keeps our tradition absolutely very alive. What I enjoyed most about working with Toronto's Mendelssohn Choir is the fact that it was our second collaboration. First we did Beethoven Ninth a couple of years ago, but there I really felt we got closer to each other. They were intense, very enjoyable rehearsals, and also before the performances I would stop by, greet them, try a couple of things, remind them a couple of things, and I just felt also now in the same way that with the orchestra we are getting closer. It's going to be a close collaboration in the coming years, but as musicians and as human beings, I felt that we really started to get to know each other when doing the Messiah.